Well, hey there, Mama, and welcome back to the Mom's Overcoming Overwhelm podcast, episode number 251. I'm Emily McDermott, and I am here beside you on this journey as we work together to declutter your home, head, and heart. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Myquillyn Smith, also known as the Nester, and she is the New York Times and Wall Street Journal best-selling author of Welcome Home, Cozy Minimalist Home, and House Rules. And for the past 18 years, she's been encouraging women to embrace their space, imperfections and all, and make it their own. And we're talking today about her new book about house hushing. We talk about how house hushing is different than traditional decluttering and how we can embrace the tension between not wanting too much stuff, but also creating a cozy, peaceful, functional home. And she talks about some of the decorating dials that we can turn up and down for coziness and warmth, how to create layers of soul within our home. We really have a wonderful discussion. And I had the pleasure of reading the book in advance and receiving a copy, and I would love to gift that copy to you. So between when this episode comes out, August 20th, 2026, and August 26th, 2026, I will be having a book giveaway. So if you share the show with a friend or leave a podcast review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast, you will be entered to win a copy of the book. So you can find more information in the show notes. And without further ado, grab that notebook and pen, and let's dive into today's conversation with Myquillyn Smith. Hey Mama, are you tired of your cluttered home and mile-long to-do lists but are too overwhelmed to know where to start? Do you lack the time and motivation and don't think you'll ever conquer the clutter? You're in the right place. I'm Emily, wife, boy mom, and declutter coach who has overcome the overwhelm in my own life through decluttering and simplifying. I believe every mom deserves the peace that comes from a clutter-free home. Ready to get your life back? Let's declutter your home, head, and heart together. Well, hi, Myquillyn. So thank you so much for coming on the Mom's Overcoming Overwhelm podcast. I am just thrilled to chat with you today.
Well, I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've been familiar with her work. I think that pretty much I've been on a minimalist path for like a decade, and I went on Libby, the library app, and I'm like, show me all the books that have the word minimalist in it. And the Cozy Minimalist Home came up, and I was like, what a cool concept, to have like the minimalist that the most people think it's like the very stark, like white walls, you can only have 5 forks type of, lifestyle. And then to have that with cozy and that juxtaposition, I thought was so interesting. And a lot of those kind of themes sort of comes into the book that we're going to talk about today about house hushing. And I would love it if you could tell us like how you became familiar with the term house hushing. I don't think it's like super well known, perhaps, in the United States yet. Maybe after the book, it's going to be like super well known, but where you found out about it and what made you decide to focus an entire book on the concept.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Yeah, I wrote that book, Cozy Minimalist Home, and it's a step-by-step decorating for more style and more stuff. But I think house hushing actually is the book that people, when they saw Cozy Minimalist Home, they thought they were getting. So with house hushing, as far as I know, and we have done the research, I made that term up. And so years ago, I was interviewed by lots of, you're right, across the pond, The Guardian, The Telegraph, they all picked this up a couple years ago. And that's actually what encouraged me that maybe this should be a book, is because more in other countries, even Australia, I was getting interviewed about this concept. And I thought, you know what? I know it seems simple to me, but people kind of gravitate. I think when we all hear the words house hushing together, it's kind of like cozy minimalist. We feel like, oh, that sounds graceful. That sounds like what I want. Like we want a minimalism with nuance. We want a minimalism with warmth, with light bulbs that aren't too harsh, with rugs and pillows and cheese and crackers. I don't want a harsh manly minimalism. I want simplicity with intention in a home where I'm raising kids, where we've got dogs and cats, where I'm hosting, where I want soul and beauty and meaning. And we can still, I believe we can have it all, but it does mean that we need to be intentional about it. So, House Hushing, of course, it is a decluttering book and decorating book. And it's about owning less, but really what it's about is quieting the visual noise that keeps our attention and keeps us from fully living in our home. So when, traditional decluttering and maybe minimalism just focuses on what can I get rid of, which is a great question. I think house hushing kind of steps back and says, what is making my home feel loud? The goal isn't just to create emptiness, it's to create a peaceful home. And so I hope that house hushing, and there's 4 methods in it that I teach, my goal is that it helps preserve the beauty, the soul, the meaning of your home while removing the visual noise that gets in the way of our everyday life. Because we're living, we're making dinner, we're doing projects, we're planting plants, we're coming in dirty, all of those things. But it's a method mostly pointed towards women like us who love and appreciate beauty, who don't want to choose between simplicity and warmth and a welcoming home, who are like, I want something that can show me. Obviously, it's not about having it all, but it's about having the things that we want and using our home the way it was created to be used.
Oh, I love that. And we just moved. We were in a home for almost 20 years and just literally moved
Mhm.
more square footage, which I was a little nervous about as a minimalist. I'm like, oh, how do I like fill it? And so this is an amazing time for me to read this book because it's about kind of doing it with this intentionality and understanding. We're going to talk about kind of where the soul piece comes into it, but also knowing that the homes that we inhabit also have their own history, have their own soul, that is part of the noise, that you're talking about. And some of when we talk about like the dials that we can kind of dial up and dial down. And I want to first start by framing, before we go into your 4 practices, how this might appeal to someone who, okay, they definitely know they don't want too much stuff, or like me, they get very overwhelmed by a lot of stuff. And for me, it's tactile. It's also visual. Like if I have a ton in my visual field, I feel very anxious and everything. But knowing like, I don't want this sterile environment. Like I want it to feel like us as a family. I want to have things that reflect our lives and our family and where we are now. So how does this house hushing approach appeal to someone that really feels that cozy minimalism tension between like wanting the soul and the warmth and the coziness, and then also like, but I really, I don't want to go to like Home Goods and have a shopping spree and come back with a bunch of stuff that just to have stuff. So how do we deal with that tension with house hushing?
Yeah, I think first just admitting that there is a tension there. A lot of beautiful things are nuanced. And I think that a lot of people, especially like me, I love decorating. I always have. And I also want and love a simple home. And so sometimes my fear when I know I need to declutter is that it's going to leave my home feeling really empty and sterile. And this first method that we go through in the book is called backwards decluttering. And it just kind of flips the process. So instead of first asking, okay, what in this room do I need to get rid of? Does every item bring me joy? Which those can work great for people. Backwards decluttering says, what do I actually miss in this room? And so what you will do is you're going to take one room at a time. You're actually going to pick another room to put some stuff away in just for 48 hours. This is not going to ruin your life. And you temporarily remove like that level 1 decor, the non-essential item. You leave all your furniture, you leave your functional things, your rug, but the cat bed, the projects, the books, all the little stacks, the gewgaw, the little sewing that you're doing, the magazines, all of those things, you just move to another room, the extra plants, the extra pillows. And it's a gentler, lower risk way to simplify it because you don't start with decisions. And so you're going to put that layer all in another room. In my house, it's usually my dining room table. I just pile everything on there. And I tell my family like, oh, I'm hushing the house. Just let it be. Then you get to experience the room that you hushed, which you say you start with your family room, quieted. peaceful, simplified, and you have not committed to one decision. It hasn't been hard. There's no tears. There's no angst. There's no wondering if you should keep your grandmother's quilt. You just get to experience the reward of your quieted, decluttered house and that room. And I like to say, keep it that way for 48 to 24 or for 24 to 48 hours, so a day or two. If you, whoever you live with, let them experience it too, because it's nice to kind of get some feedback. The cat's going to notice, she's going to come in and stretch out on the coffee table. The dog will roll around. The kids will want to do their homework in there. And I say, yes, like use the room. You want to be in it and you want to just watch. At first it will feel weird, but experience has how it feels to have really, it's kind of shocking less because of what maybe we've become house blind to get rid of those layers. And after a day or two, this happens 100% of the time. I've done this with thousands of women in my private community. You start to not only enjoy how that room feels, but you start to get protective of it. You're like, oh, I don't want to mess this up. And that's when you know you are ready to kind of evaluate if there are some things you're missing. Well, I love that vase that, was my grandmother's. My roses are blooming. I'm going to bring that back in. Or, I want that little touch light on the coffee table. Or of course I want my puzzle. And it helps you, instead of going back in the room of your pile of stuff, while you're in the room that you hushed, you ask yourself, what is missing? And so that is the most wonderful, gentlest way to convince yourself that this decluttering is not going to wreck up the home you have worked so hard to make cozy and welcoming, but it's going to support your simple life. And so that's kind of a really light touch of backwards decluttering.
And that, when it comes to decluttering for overwhelmed moms, which is the community that I serve, it's like, I don't know where to start. I always hear that. You probably do too. I don't know where to start. I don't know where to start. Because decision making, which is typically in your normal decluttering processes, that you're making a lot of decisions. It's very emotionally, mentally taxing, and we're already overwhelmed and stressed out. And so it's like, oh, where do I go? But when it comes to this backwards decluttering, is there a particular place, like if you had an overwhelmed mom coming to you and she's like, this sounds like a great idea. I love that it's lower risk. I love that I can kind of feel how it is without all these layers. Do you have a recommendation of like maybe one or two places where someone could start with that approach?
I like to start in the kitchen. As you know, there's not a lot of sentimental, your grandmother's quilt's probably not in there. And it's a room that we're in a lot. It's a room that when it functions well, we feel like $1,000,000. And when it's overwhelming, we don't want to cook. We don't want to be in there. We feel lousy about ourselves. So to be able to start in your kitchen, maybe just start with your counters and say, I'm going to hush the counters. I'm going to take everything off my counters, put it in, on the breakfast table, put it in the dining room, put it on the back porch. I've used all kinds of places just for 24 hours. And then I'm going to get that hot rag. I'm going to wipe down all my counters. And then my goal for my house, no matter where I've lived, has always been like 3 things on the counters. Like that's it. And one is usually a tray. And on that tray, I call it a home base. I have my salt, my pepper, my thing of utensils, a plant, a candle, all kinds of things, but it counts as one. That's one way I cheat. I have my soaps out and all my pretty little things. But for the most part, I try to keep everything away. But, you hush your counters. Let's say you do it while the kids are at school. And then, of course, it's going to feel great when you go to make dinner. But if there's something you need, maybe you moved the toaster out and you need it, you let yourself bring that back in to use. But you don't just bring everything in because it feels weird. And again, what that's going to do is it's going to feel so good. You're going to feel, and you have not cleaned, you have not made any decisions. You've just moved it. You're not committing to anyone. No one has to fuss or be worried or be scared. No. We're just getting to enjoy the house kind of like when you just moved in. And then you do that for a couple days. And then you ask yourself, like, what is actually truly really needed? And after a couple of days, you have proved to yourself maybe either what you became blind to or what, you kind of use, but maybe it's not worth sitting on your counter, or maybe you just thought you were using this and you found another way. And so I do think the kitchen is a great way to start.
Yeah, and that experiment, especially when we can over time really become blind to things. I know back when I did reels many years ago, I had actually one of the kitchen where it's like what I see versus my husband. And what I see is like the stuff on the counters and the stuff in the sink and the permission slips and everything. And for his view, it's
point of view right to the refrigerator, to get the snack. So I think that different members of our family, we have blindness to different things. And if you actually experiment with taking out everything that isn't necessary, you might also realize what's necessary to me might be different, than my kids. They might be like, oh, mom, where's the toaster or whatever. And so then you're able to not only have kind of those fresh eyes to approach that space, but also you can kind of understand this is important to me, but to my husband and my kids, it might be a little bit different. And where's kind of that happy medium where we all have the things that we use and we need to start. And then we can kind of layer in some of those other areas of beauty and some of those other kind of fun things once we get past just like those functional items that we use and need every day.
Absolutely. And sometimes that teaches us maybe the things that do need, that 20% of space that's kind of out in the open, especially, I think that's how our house talks to us, as if you always have wires out on your counter, well, that's probably telling you that maybe you could invest in a little charging station. And so instead of getting frustrated at, oh, why are they all using, different mugs or whatever, it sometimes stepping back and saying, okay, what is my house actually trying to tell me here? And the people that use the house, its sole purpose, its main purpose is to serve them. And yeah, we want it to serve them beautifully. We'll get the pretty mugs. We'll get the pretty charging station. That's fine.
Yeah, and I do love that starting with the kitchen too. It's really funny. We moved here sight unseen. Our parents and in-laws actually did the home hunting for us. And then I was in Virginia while my in-laws' parents and my husband were unpacking everything and putting it away. So I do decluttering, professional organizing. I'm like, oh, how is this going to work? But in the kitchen, it turns out we had a lot more gadgets than I thought. And they just kind of like put everything in the drawers, and I get there and I'm like, oh my gosh, these are really full. So I did a bit of backwards decluttering myself in the kitchen to start, just because I'm like, I never use like 50%. They're kind of a just for when I do these random tasks, And it was really great because I gave myself that permission to just put the stuff I don't use as often in a box and put it somewhere else, so that what I interact with every day in my kitchen, which is, at least 3 times a day, is the stuff that I'm actually using. And it's just like so helpful and calming, especially in a new space where you're like, wait, where's the dishes? Where's like everything's in a new place. And so it's helpful to just kind of like, yeah, have that initial, a place where it's not super emotional. Like you said, it's more of like that functional, and you can still have elements of beauty. I love that tray idea, by the way, that you can cheat with the tray. That's so great.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about putting it in a box. I think sometimes we think that's a cheater's way. I think that is a wonderful way. It buys us time. It takes out some of the emotion. I think we don't give ourselves credit. Like we feel like, well, it doesn't count unless I throw it away, give it away, or whatever the other thing is, find a new home for it. But no, that counts, especially if you kind of give yourself a plan for what to do next. It's like, okay, I'm not going to look at it for 6 weeks, and then I'm just going to give it away if I didn't open it up. Like, have a plan for that and trust. But these baby steps actually are what allow us to make huge progress.
Yeah. And I want to move to your second practice, which is the quiet decorating. And you mentioned in the book, you have several like these dials that you can kind of like turn up or turn down. So you have the volume, which is actually like when we're talking about hushing the house, it's about, what is the volume and different things. And then also the coziness that we can kind of turn up or turn down the coziness too, which I just loved that analogy. I'm a visual person, so that was really helpful. And I would just love, because you list several of them, if you have any favorites for yourself or even with your community that you just love, that helps us, as you say, create harmony in our homes. We're not trying for silence. We're not trying for perfection. We really want the harmony between us and then also like the space that we're living. So what are some of your favorite quiet decorating dials?
Yes. Okay. So quiet decorating is the second method. And it's because I feel like the wonderful minimalists that we love, they've given us one method, and that is get rid of it. And it is a wonderful thing. We all need to get rid of stuff. I love it. But I think there are more ways to turn down the volume of our house besides just getting rid of stuff. that leaves so much unturned. And so one of those dials, like if you think about having a stereo, you can turn the coziness up, or you can turn it down, or you can turn the visual attention that your room is asking for. You can turn that dial up and down. And so, yeah, the first thing is the volume of things, or the quantity of items in a room. Obviously, we all know that. But what beyond that kind of grabs our attention, or do we have control of? And those could be things like the contrast in a room. Think about a room that maybe has black and white stripe wallpaper and a red mirror and a sofa that's plaid. Like, there is a lot of contrast happening, and the contrast grabs our attention, and the attention and how much attention our room is asking of us is what we read as overwhelm. It can be beautiful attention. It can be ugly attention. It could be attention of our stuff saying, put me away, clean me, take me to the library. It could be the attention of stuff saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. So some of those things, one that I do like to think about is, for example, contrast. If you think about a room and let's say it feels, you've decluttered and maybe it feels extra empty, or you've decluttered and maybe it still feels full. Well, you can use contrast. Let's say you're going to buy some drapes to put up. If you've decluttered your room and now it feels a little bit empty, well, I would encourage you to use contrast to fill up the room visually with something you're already going to get, which is drapes. You're not filling up something on a surface, and maybe get some drapes that will stand out against the wall. So maybe you get drapes that aren't the same color of your wall. That way, when you walk into your room, you're like, I see drapes. Your eye is just kind of drawn naturally to the contrast. If you've decluttered a room all you can, and you still maybe need some window treatments, or you still want the softness that drapes add, then you would say, I'm going to use contrast. I'm going to turn that contrast down. I'm going to get drapes that are the same color as the wall. That way I still get the function of drapes. I still get the softness, and they kind of drown the echo, but they're not going to draw my eye. They're just still going to quietly be there. Another one of my favorites is scale. I think that, we think it's almost the opposite of what you think. I mean, yes, like a little, I love the Scandinavian use of like a tiny little piece of art on a big mantle. Kind of the juxtaposition is really beautiful. But I think some of us, we have lots of small things, and when we see a room, it feels empty and out of balance. And so instead of saying, I'm going to add one large piece of art, for example, we add 25 tiny pieces. Well, 25 tiny pieces of art ask for more attention. They turn up the visual volume more than one large piece of art. And so scale is something that we can use, again, to control the volume of the decor of our home. And, I talk about 10 different ones, and it can be such a relief, especially if you are living either end of the spectrum. If you're living in a tiny house and you're like, wow, this house still feels overwhelming and I can't declutter, I need everything. Well, then you want quiet decorating. Or maybe you have decluttered and you're like, it feels so good, but it also echoes, or it also feels kind of cold. Well, you use these dials and you can add some coziness to your house without filling up your surfaces, without draining your energy.
Yeah, those are great. And again, I love the freedom to kind of play with the dials. For me, again, I am working with someone that's kind of helped guide me through some furniture purchasing. And for me, being kind of a perfectionist, I'm like, I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want to like pick things and then it's the wrong thing. And then I have to figure out like how to get rid of them and everything. But just giving yourself kind of that freedom and space to kind of play. And one of the ones that I was drawn to, this shouldn't be a surprise, was margin. Because I think a lot of times like people think, oh, well, if I'm decorating, like I have to have things everywhere and everything has to be filled. And it's like, no, the margin, the space that you leave also speaks. It's not
Yes.
silent, like it has a voice also. And so we want to like respect the fact that even though our natural inclination, like when I tell people they could have an empty drawer if they want to, they're like, what? Like that's crazy talk. Or like an partially empty shelf. They're like, but I got to put
Right.
something there. And just being able to have permission to leave space intentionally, I think is really important for people when they think, oh, I'm decorating. That means I have to decorate everything.
Yes. I have very little on my walls. But my rooms all feel cozy because I have big rugs. I have lots of window treatments. I have pillows. I have large plants that maybe touch the ceiling. I have texture. I have pattern. I have contrast. And so one of the ways that I turn down the visual volume is I have lots of empty walls. Now, my walls might be painted. I don't have like pattern on my walls a whole lot. It's just not my look of like wallpaper, although I love it. But if you love, say you love wall art, well, maybe you don't have pattern on your rugs. Like, so there's all of these different little ways, depending on what it is that you love, that you can still have the look. And, that's where I think minimalism has kind of done us dirty. It kind of makes us feel like we have to have a black sofa and we can't have any pattern. No, no, no. You can enjoy that. Those things actually add to the coziness of our home, but choose what is important to you. You can be a minimalist and have a sofa with a pattern. But if that makes your room feel too loud, you also can be aware of how to quiet that room. So it's just these wonderful skills. And I love that. That's what being creative in your home is. And usually, no matter what you have, no matter what you started with, there is a trick or a way to still quiet the room, no matter where you're starting from.
And when we have done our backwards decluttering, and then we have kind of worked with some of these quiet decorating dials, we're then layering. And I love this term, you use it throughout the book, is the layering. It isn't just we just dump everything at one point. It is a process. It isn't just going to happen in 24 hours. It is a process. But we layer in the soulful styling. And you mentioned kind of really deciding between, okay, we have the soul of the past, the present, and the future, and being able to interweave these things really beautifully into your home. Can you speak a little to that as far as like the soulful layering aspect of it?
Yes, I would love to. It was 5 or 6 years ago. Well, actually, it was like 15 years ago. We moved into a house we had to totally redo, and we moved out 5 or 6 years ago. And while we were redoing that house, I was extremely minimal, and mostly because you had to. Because when you have dust, when you're taking down walls, and right before we moved out, the house kind of made me sad because even though it was finished, it wasn't very soulful, and it made me realize I never had the time to add that layer of soul in the home because we were already always doing a renovation. And it was really missing something that feels endearing and something that makes a house feel like home. And I never got to do that at my last house. We moved out as soon as it was done. And so in my current house, I was like, I am not going to let that happen. When I think about adding the soul of the past, the present, and future, think about the past is represented by things that remind you where you've been or where your family has been. That's going to be your heirlooms. Maybe a flea market find that someone you never even knew where they've been. Your travel souvenirs, your grandmother's bowl, your child's artwork, old books. These things, they give your home a sense of groundedness, roots, patina, meaning, like, oh, you have this past. The present, and I think this is sometimes something that we don't allow ourselves to do, it reflects the life you're living right now. The fresh flowers from your yard, the puzzle that you're working on, your favorite mug by the coffee maker, your planner, the books you're currently reading, your blanket that you cover up with every night, the cat bed, like these everyday objects that tell what you're working on right now, what's meaningful to you right now. The kids, my kids would play the piano when they come home from school and play Legos. And so we had some spots, but guess who got to pick out the container the Legos go in? Me. Because if it's going to sit in the living room, I'm going to pick out the prettiest basket ever, because that's the part that I'm going to look at. You can have your Legos, but I get to pick the rug it sits on, and I get to pick the basket with the lid that it goes into. And then the future, I think also, like, our home should represent our goals, what we're becoming. The basket hanging by your back door waiting for the flowers to bloom so you can go out and cut them, the first roses that bloom and come in. The keyboard that you just bought, hoping that one of your kids will pick up the piano, your guest room that's ready for visitors, the things that you hope to move into, the travel book to Spain that you're, hoping to go to. Those things are so enjoyable to look around your house and be like, oh yeah, we're going to do that. I used to have a picture of, at our old house, we had a crazy little pond in the backyard, and I had this dream pond taped to my window. You couldn't see it unless you moved the curtain. And I could look out and look my pond, and I could move the curtain and see the goal pond that I wanted. And I liked having it there. It's like when you write, your word of the year on the mirror, it reminds you of where you're going. And so those are kind of layers of soul, of meaning, of purpose, of reminders that it's good to have around your house. We don't want to declutter to the point where it looks like a robot lives in our house.
And also, when you have family or friends that are visiting, one of the things I remember from the book is that you say that people come to your house and they're like, I don't know what it is, but I don't want to leave, and to like have somebody have that experience. Now, we are now living close to family, which is great because we haven't for almost 20 years. And I want to be able to host, I want to be able to have people over and to have those conversation pieces where someone can say, oh, that's a really interesting picture. Like, can you tell me more about that? And I could say, oh, I got it for sale on Home Goods. Or I could say like, oh, that was from our trip, to Ireland, and this is where we bought it, and there was this really cool shop owner, and you have like the story that kind of goes along with it. And it's being able, not that every single thing in your home has to have like all these elaborate stories, but that's what is layering in, like you said, that meaning and that soul by intentionally picking things that are speaking to these different aspects of your life in different times in your life. So I just think that's really beautiful. Again, those permission slips. I feel like it's a book of permission slips. It's like you have permission to decide like how you want to bring the different parts of you and your family that are important into your home so that your home is speaking these stories to people that come and that are guests or visitors and that. So I just thought that was really a beautiful way that you described that in the book.
Thank you. And I think too, when we're investing in, decorating our home, if we first shop our house, let's say you have a christening gown I have one that all three of my boys wear. Well, what a beautiful thing. Instead of going to Home Goods and buying a beautiful framed piece of art, why don't I get a frame for that christening gown? Or why don't I just go and order a beautiful hanger and like a really pretty upholstery tack, put that in the wall, have the dress cleaned and hang that up. And so shopping your house first for meaningful things and then saying, what do I need so that I can display this, protect it, and enjoy it is such a better way than just going to Home Goods. And I love Home Goods. I love Target, but maybe Home Goods has the hanger or has the frame.
Yeah, so it's more like supporting something else. And that is a great point you brought up, kind of like the texture of actual clothing, like using clothing as some of the display or, some of the art that we have in the home. And I thought that was just something I hadn't really thought of before, which I thought was kind of cool. I've heard of like t-shirt quilts, like that kind of thing, but not actually using like a christening gown or like part of your wedding gown and actually having that because again, it's an opportunity. Not only do we look at it and we're reminded of these memories, but then we're able to share that. I think a lot of the challenge, I guess, between generations is that sometimes we don't pass the stories along to the next generation. And so when you have your parents, maybe interested in giving you stuff and you're like, well, this doesn't mean anything to me. Well, if I was able to share the stories behind these things with my kids, maybe it would have meant more. And so I try to be very intentional about doing that with my kids about like why this is important, why we have this, the story behind it. And that way, you're able to have those stories and memories continue through generations, which I think is beautiful.
I love that. You said it so well. One of the things that we've kept that is wearable, which it don't fit any of us anymore, is like a little toddler's knitted cap. All three of my boys wear it. It has like little ears on it. And what I figured out is I don't want to pack that away with my baby clothes. It's packed away with our winter decor and our Christmas decor because I get it out every winter. I stuff it with tissue paper and set it on the shelf. And it's wonderful because my kids used to wear it. We have pictures of them in it. And now we get it out with the Christmas decor. Same with like a little Easter outfit. I get that out. It's with my spring decor. I have like one little bin. It's got, plastic eggs for the neighbor kids when they come over, a few things like that. and I have this little set of overalls with the Easter bunny on it. And then we just hang that in the living room on the, door handle every Easter. And so thinking about those meaningful things, like where can I put them so that I actually use them and enjoy them when the time is right, can be really helpful too.
Yeah, and that segues really well into your last practice, the living seasonally, because, and this is something that I recommend, I know a lot of folks do, because a lot of times we can get overwhelmed by the seasonal decor. We're like, oh my gosh, it's like change out time, and oh, there's like all these bins and everything. And I would love it if you could just kind of briefly do the overview of this 4-step process, the edit, audit, plan, and pick, which is kind of like, in what you're saying, we're getting out the Christmas bin, maybe getting out the beanie. And can you talk to us a little bit about how we can live seasonally and kind of not be overwhelmed by holiday decor when it comes to our house hushing?
Yeah. Oh, I would love to. Well, I think of living seasonally, it's not really about buying new decorations,
Yeah.
sadly, for Hobby Lobby 4 times a year, but it's really living seasonally is the seasons and our seasons and where those come together and identifying, thinking ahead, like what do we need? So I do have 4 steps. Edit and audit those are the things you do at the end of a season. Say it's the end of summer. You're going to edit and audit. How was summer? So editing is about, you walk through your house real quick with a basket or whatever. And like, okay, we don't need the pool towels anymore. We don't need the flip flops. The game table needs to be turned into a homework table. I'm not going to be dipping strawberries anymore. I'm going to make soup. So let me put, that stuff away. So it's about like literally editing it out the last season. And then auditing is just noticing what brought me and whoever else lives in my household, what brought us joy the past season. And I like to write it down. It's a reminder the next season when you come around, and it's always the things that you don't think it is, So when it was making potato salad with my mom. And when we did the hike and we all like mom fell in the creek or whatever it is, like those little things like that. What that does is it reminds you it was not the 10-foot scarecrow that you bought at Hobby Lobby. It wasn't maybe it was the fireworks, but a lot of times it's not like plastic decor. It is experiences. So that's one little way to remind us, the edit and audit, the things that we're using and the experiences we had. Then we move into, okay, it's coming into fall. We're going to plan and we're going to pick. So when we plan, we think about what do I actually need as a human person this season? What does my family need? When my boys were in college, and the seasons were changing or they were coming home for fall break or winter break, I would even like send them a text like, how are you doing? What would you like for your fall break? Do you need people? Do you need rest? Do you need play? Do you need inspiration? Do you need margin? Do you need mom, time with mom? Like, what do you need? We need to do that for ourselves too. Like, is this a time where I need to be around community? Is this a time where I need to be quiet? Is this a time where I need to serve others? Is this a time where I need to be really productive? And just thinking like, what is the season going to hold for me? What do I as a human need? And then also thinking about how I need this season to feel, which goes into how, if you need the season to feel restful, then you want to provide a home that feels restful. So of course, we're all probably going to buy some stuff for our home, but when you're in the aisles of Hobby Lobby, instead of just getting everything with a fall leaf on it, you can think, oh, I want my home to feel restful. Why don't I get a new throw? Because my other one's ratty and it's not as soft as this one. And when I take naps on the front porch, it can be really restful. And so it guides you into investing in things that for that season, help you have the season that you truly need. And then the last one is pick. And I like to pick 3 words. I stole this from Allison Bernstein, I think is her name. She's a wardrobe girl. And she talks about if you're trying to figure out your style, you pick 3 words to help define it. And I think that can go so well for our seasons, especially if you tend to go overboard, maybe especially in the fall and the winter. So maybe for fall, you pick 3 words like cozy, grounded, and thankful. For winter, my words forever have been simplicity, comfort, and joy. Those become a filter. If someone invites us to do something as a family, let's say it's wintertime and we know our schedules are getting full. Well, I'll think, does this add simplicity, comfort, and joy to that? Can be like a rubric. Or if I am shopping and I see something spectacular that I want to buy, like a whole China set, like, oh, hold on, does this add simplicity, comfort, and joy? No, it adds like difficulty, spending a lot of money, and now I have to care for it. And, 11 months out of the year, I have to store it somewhere. So it helps me. I've pre-chosen these words, but it doesn't mean that, oh, I'm never going to spend money on anything. Maybe for me, joy is hosting a soup cook-off, and I'm going to get me that new Le Creuset, soup thing that I've always wanted, or I'm going to get a new bread knife. And so we can spend our fall budget on the things that are really going to help us experience the season that we need.
I love the words, and especially you have a word bank like in the book, which is great. So if people need some inspiration, they can start there. And I agree, it just is a great way to kind of frame things and then filter as far as like, we don't have to succumb to, oh, there's a sale going on. So I'm going to, like you said, getting everything with like a fall leaf. So the book, again, it's lots of permission slips. It's beautiful. It has a lot of practical guidance. And I would love it if you could tell us where everyone could grab the book and anything else that you want to share.
Well, thank you so much. The book is available anywhere books are sold, Amazon, hopefully your local bookstore, Barnes and Noble, all of those good places. If you go to thenester.com, you can take a quiz and find out, it's like takes a minute, what your house is saying to you, which is really fun. And then you can find me at thenester.com, or if you just need like daily encouragement in your home, on Instagram at thenester.
Wonderful. Well, I will put all of that in the show notes. Again, congratulations on the new book, Myquillyn, and it was just a joy speaking with you.
Thanks, Emily. This was so fun to be here.
Hey, Mama, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, could you please share this episode with another mom who is feeling overwhelmed? Also, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a 5-star written review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Finally, if you would like more support, come on over to our free Facebook group, tinyurl.com/moms overcoming overwhelm. Can't wait to connect with you soon.